I was 13 when I stopped speaking to my mother. Because sometimes speechlessness isn't something that happens to you. It's something that you choose. And I know that it's not uncommon for teenagers to stop speaking to their mums, you know, for an hour or for a day or for a week even. Mine lasted a little bit longer than that. Mine lasted a lot longer than that. I didn't speak to my mother again until I went to university. Yeah. And I know what you'll be thinking. I know what you're thinking, John Campbell. That Noelle McCarthy. I bet she was a willful little girl. And you'd be right. I was a willful little girl. And my mother, Mammy has her own issues. She's not the easiest person to deal with. I think the thing that sums this up, my mother is the only person I know of, to the best of my knowledge, who the Samaritans have hung up on. Not making it up. You know, she was the scourge of taxi drivers within a 10-mile radius of Cork City. She never drove, same as me and you. And her name is Carol, but look, keep going. There, the similarities end, I promise. She never drove, so she was the scourge of taxi drivers around Cork. She was a very exacting passenger when we would drive around in taxis with her. I was home in Ireland recently, and one of them told me that there was actually danger money added onto the fare when it was a mammy pickup. And look, I don't know if he was making that up, but if he didn't, then he definitely should have. So, you know, there's Mammy, difficult, and there's me, willful. And the thing is, my mother is very, very sensitive as well. So as soon as she realized that I had stopped speaking to her, she stopped speaking to me too. Now, look, to be honest with you, history doesn't record. I cannot remember the exact circumstance that caused me to do this. You know, our fights were legion and they would happen daily. But I do remember, very clearly making that decision. I am not going to speak to you again. And I remember equally clearly her, once she realized that I was no longer speaking to her, answering my silence with a silence that was just as loud. Now, there were challenges involved in this, obviously, seeing as I was 13 years old and we were living in the same house, forced to collaborate on all of the things that parents and children usually collaborate on: laundry and school and homework and food and all of the rest of it. Do you think that for 1 second my mother and I let that get in the way of not speaking to each other? No, my friends. No, we did not. There were workarounds. Now, the great thing about being 6 people in a small house, because my 2 brothers, my sister and my dad were also present for this, lucky them, was that we very rarely were in the same room, just the 2 of us. So if there was an urgent message or a logistical message that needed to be passed on, it could be done so quite easily by using the other person as a vector of conversation. You just added in tell her or tell Mammy or tell Noelle and you were done. For example, me, is that chicken? I went through several very intense animal rights activist phases as a teenager. Is that chicken? Tell Mammy I'm not eating chicken anymore. Tell Noelle that's a lovely chicken. That was a very happy chicken. Ask Mammy, was she present for its final hours? and so on and so forth. And the thing that gets me now, I mean, this is my version of the story, obviously. My sister, my brothers, God bless my father, they'll all have a very different version of this story. But what gets me now is the fact that none of them, in my memory at least, at any time turned around and said what any normal person would say, which is, tell her yourself, or she can hear you. I think they were just so riveted by this, you know, and they wanted to see how far we would go. You won't be surprised when I tell you we are a family of talkers. No. My earliest memory is of having a sore throat from talking, you know, when I was 3 or 4 years old. Even today, when I'm hoarse, it gives me such a great feeling of well-being. You know? And growing up, we're all talkers. Nobody in my family slept in their own beds. I didn't even know that was weird because we would go into each other's bedroom so we could stay up for longer, talking for longer. And this goes on to this day. My youngest brother, Robert, still lives at home. And his thing is to go out on a Saturday night, get on the piss with his friends and come home at like 4 o'clock in the morning, jump into bed beside my mother, smoke all of her cigarettes and talk to her about poetry. I'm not kidding. 20 John Player Blue and Robert Frost, The Road Less Travelled, every Saturday night. He is 28 years old. My father keeps his door locked now. And the thing is, he never said anything to me either. Not in my memory. My dad never said anything to me about this. He never said, you know, wouldn't you just talk to your mum? And the funny thing is, I know I couldn't have done it with him. I couldn't have kept a silence like that with my father because he would have made a joke of it or he would have made me... I tried to a few times, you know, I was a teenager, so I tried ignoring him too. But he'd always say, come on, Moll. You know, it's okay. Not my mother, though. Not my mother. She was the one who started the notes. This was about 2 years into it. You know, we were ripe for innovation at this point. 5 o'clock in the evening, the note under the bedroom door, Dear Noelle, who else would be in there? Dear Noelle, your dinner is downstairs on the table. I remember looking at that note, you know, just the A4 and her perfect little handwriting and being furious that I had not thought of it first. But she had form. This is what I found out. Mammy and her brother, my Uncle Len, didn't speak for almost a decade. You see, the thing is, everyone says the Irish are great talkers, but they never tell you we're great not talkers as well, when we want to be. And the funny thing, you know the really funny thing? We lived on Blarney Road. You could see the castle from my bedroom. But anyway, Mammy and Len, so apparently he said something, he told her she was a mere statistic in life, which I think is put down's go is pretty bloody withering. And she showed him, she didn't speak to him again for pretty much 10 years. The axe was buried when he rang her up to tell her that Barbara Streisand had made a film called Nuts. And as conciliatory gestures go, for my mother, this was perfect. You just have to trust me. And I mean, the thing is, Len is a film obsessive anyway. You know, when Stanley Kubrick died, we all got a half day off school. He was so upset on the phone telling my father that Daddy thought it was a friend of the family. You know, so Mammy had form in this. This silence that stretched. In the end, it was me, I thought. I remember I'd moved out. I was 17 and I was going to university. And I'd moved out of home. And the deal was, because I was, you know, relatively young to them, if not to me, I had to come home every Sunday to have my dinner at home. And one Sunday, I was in her bedroom, actually. I was looking through batwing blouses were big in Ireland in the 90s for some reason, and I was looking for one of those, and I found just on the ground actually a pile of old photos, and there was a photo at the top, and it was of my mother, and she was about 19 years old, She was nursing at the time. She was a nursing student, a psychiatric nurse, as she tells everybody, as though any other kind of nursing is not worth bothering about. But she was sitting with her friends in a pub in Kinsale, and she was so beautiful and so young. I mean, narcissist that I was, I probably, this probably happened because she looked young like I was. And I looked at that photo and the penny dropped, and I realized that before she was Mammy, scourge of taxi drivers, person put on this earth to piss me off, she was a person. She was a person. And she was doing her best. And I wish I could say that I got up and I ran downstairs and I said, Mammy, I'm so sorry, like any normal human being would. But I didn't, because a silence that long gathers its own momentum. It has a power of its own. And I think if I had said anything directly to her, I would have freaked everybody out. So I didn't say it then, but I said it. Something, a sentence. I dropped the preface, the tell her or ask her. And eventually we started to talk because she's sensitive. She would have picked up whatever I was putting down. And this is the first time I've ever told that story. And looking back, it seems so crazy to me now. I was talking about it with John when we were backstage, and he said, "But why? What happened? And I don't know. I still do not know. Except that silence is a language, and it doesn't stop communication. There's lots of ways to be really creative in dead air. And now I speak to my mother all the time, for long periods of time, on the telephone, from the other side of the world. And I don't want to miss a word she says, so I write it all down. Thank you.